back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday, mainly covering the NFL, but we'll also sprinkle in some NBA as the season's quickly approaching and MLB with the postseason right around the corner. But with that being said, NFL season has obviously taken us by storm, and me by storm in particular. We've already gone through 2 weeks, believe it or not. Kind of sad, but week 3 starts tomorrow, so that's always a positive, as Tuesdays and Wednesdays are obviously kind of the slowest days because there's really no football going on, and that's not good for me. Always love to see it going on. But with that being said, it's Wednesday, so it's already ranking time, and we are going to rank how each team looks, and we're going to overreact. That's why everyone loves to do, including myself, based off of 2 weeks, who we think, might be going to the Super Bowl that does end up going to the playoffs. We look at the Saints last year that were unstoppable through 2 games. Everyone thought this team, 1 seed Super Bowl, will score every drive, and then they end up, losing 7 straight. So, it's a fun time. But, with that being said, through 2 weeks, we've gone a lot of great football. We also had some bad football, mainly through my Vikings being in that mix. But, with that being said, we have the split into 6 different categories. So we have our Super Bowl contenders, obviously teams competing for the Lombardi, solid playoff teams, teams that are going to be in the mix. Then we have potential wild cards, could sneak in, might just miss. And then, the 6 to 8 win competitive teams. Then the not good, but, intriguing, I guess. They have, a piece or two, that makes them fun. And then number 1 pick contention, otherwise saying not good at all, no hope, already looking forward to the offseason. So with that being said, our first team up is the New Orleans Saints, and we got to throw them in number 1 pick contention. Surprisingly, Spencer Rattler, my guy. I like to, call myself Spencer Rattler guy. He's been playing pretty well through 2 weeks. He's put his teams in spots to win the game. Unfortunately, hasn't really panned out. They've, come short from both games, but I'm really intrigued how they do in their first road game heading on the road to Seattle. I think that'll be a good test to show, really, if they are going to be a competitive team, or, is that first 2-week fight with Kellen Moore, let's, show them what we got. We'll keep it close. And then they end up getting smoked the rest of the season. I think this team can win some games, just with Spencer Rattler, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara. That offense with Kellen Moore could be good enough. We saw them, have some success against the 49ers. Spencer Rattler threw for 3 touchdown passes. But with that being said, this defense still, for me, leaves a lot to be desired. And I think that's kind of what will do them in the season and, make them a number 1 overall pick contention. The Miami Dolphins, I think they're too talented to be in the number 1 pick contention, but I'm going to have them in the not good, but they are intriguing in the way that, will Mike McDaniel be fired, midway through the season? Will Tua be the QB, next year? And they still have some pieces like Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. Will Tyreek Hill be traded to Kansas City? There have been a lot of rumors. And if that all happens, then yes, they'll join New Orleans down here. But they still have guys that I believe in the defense, with Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, that had a great rookie season. I think this team, can bounce back. But, it's going to be interesting. Micah Fitzpatrick in the secondary, they did get exploited by the Patriots, though. The offense did look better. And tomorrow night they play against Buffalo, and I think it will show a lot about this team if they can at least put up a fight, or if they get dog walked like how the Bills did to the Jets, then I think we can pretty much write their season off as, maybe not number 1 overall pick, but it's just intriguing what's going to happen because they aren't a good team and they still leave a lot to be desired, but still intriguing because of the pieces they have. Will they be shipped? And they're still too talented right now if they kept the full roster to have the number 1 overall pick, but maybe a top 10 pick. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens, my Super Bowl pick. I'm sticking with it. Super Bowl contenders. Through 2 weeks, they're 1-1. They should be 2-0 against Buffalo. They blew it simply, and that is always my biggest concern with the Ravens. But this team's too talented. Lamar playing at MVP level. Derrick Henry, you know what he can do, especially against the Bills. He has a lot of success. That defense, Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins in the secondary, Justin Madubuike, or I forget his first name now, but Madubuike up front, just providing pressure, Kyle Van Noy, and, Roquan Smith. That defense has got playmakers. They just got to put it all together in that offense. Zay Flowers, year 3, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely coming back. This team is so good. Ron Lee Stanley up front, Tyler Linderbaum. They're one of the best teams of football, arguably the most talented. They are definitely 100% Super Bowl contenders. Really, no debate about it. Just can they not turn the ball over in big games and just show up when it matters most will be the Ravens' biggest question mark. The Cincinnati Bengals, unfortunately, now they are 2-0, but Joe Burrow's out for 3 months. I got to put them in the 7-8 win competitive. I think Jake Browning will be able to manufacture this offense, at a decent level. We started in 2023. We started against the Jaguars. He made some good plays, made some bad plays, but he's going to get the ball to his playmakers, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I am intrigued. There have been rumors, do they trade for a quarterback? I think for now, just with that division, how stacked it is, the defense, still being suspect, and then obviously the Joe Burrow injury. I think they can be competitive, but I think this is going to be too much for them to overcome. And it's unfortunate when they do start 2-0, they're talking about getting a hot start, the best start under Joe Burrow, and unfortunately, he's done for pretty much the year. The Denver Broncos, I'm going to put. I still think for now I'll put in. I think playoff team. I still believe in the Broncos. They're kind of a fluke call away from being 2-0. And you couldn't really get more opposites in week 1, week 2, where week 1 the defense is historically dominant. Even with bad field positioning, the offense was giving them. They were still holding the Titans 3 points, 12 points the whole game. Denver's offense, besides a couple drives, couldn't do crap. Week 2, Denver's offense, Bo Nix bounces back 3 touchdown passes, did have an unfortunate turnover in the red zone, and the defense could not stop Daniel Jones, and the Colts didn't have to punt once. So I think overall, the defense is still, a top 5 unit. They do tend to struggle against the highly talented teams. So that does remain a concern. But, the offense is still very talented. Bo Nix, coached by Sean Payton, Cortland Sutton. They got playmakers everywhere. Troy Franklin looks like he's going to be a stud in this league for a long time. And that defense still with Pat Surtain, Zach Allen up front, some of the best players in football. I trust them. I think they'll still be a playoff team despite the loss that they suffered against Indianapolis. Up next, the New York Giants. I'm going to put them in not good but intriguing. They have some great playmakers in Malik Neighbors. I think Jackson Dart still the biggest question mark. I like him. I liked him at Ole Miss. He was one of my favorite college quarterbacks. But Russell Wilson, that performance he had on Sunday has to be the quarterback, obviously. And it's not really because they lost. It's just because they just, I feel, don't really have enough talent to keep up. I think, Wan'Dale Robinson is a solid number 2, but this offensive line, I don't think is all that great. I think, the Dallas Cowboys defense is really just on the secondary, especially that bad. And when you can't get the pressure up front, a lot of teams will have field days with this defense. And then the Giants defense, we thought was going to be their strength, their front 7. Heck no. Dak Prescott, Javonte Williams, they're running up on those on that front 7. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, they were catching everything coming their way. So a lot of question marks remain. Brian Daboll, he's on the hot seat. They're 0-2. It was great to see what they did in week 2. I just don't know if that offense will be able to sustain if they don't have a sustainable running game with Tyrone Tracy, and his vision is still very questionable. Scadaboo's a great power back, but doesn't have the best vision, so it kind of remains to be seen. But they do have some intriguing pieces. Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Thibodeau, Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson. This team has got some players, but overall they're not really that great. I kind of find it tough with them, especially losing that Cowboys game, to get above that 5 to 6 win range. But we'll see. I could easily eat my words next week if they go out there and beat the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Next up, my Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to throw in potential wild card. Overall, the roster's still great. The defense is, very good, at least up front. With Grenard, Van Ginkel should be come back, but the Vikings are just plagued by injuries. Obviously, JJ McCarthy done for a couple weeks, so Carson Wentz comes in. Maybe that's a temporary upgrade just because Wentz is a professional, knows a lot of the defenses. He can get the ball to Jefferson. But just the Vikings, it's been an unfortunate start to the year, and they're still 1-1. Thank gosh they managed to come back against the Bears. Otherwise, they could be in deep trouble. But Jordan Addison suspended for 3 games, only 1 game left in that. Darisaw hopefully should be back soon. And like I said, Aaron Jones is heading to IR, but Jordan Mason, that's why they trade for him, have him step in. But it's just about unfortunate the Vikings have been plagued by injuries and suspensions to start the year. Kind of reminds me of the 49ers last year. So it easily could go off the rails, and they only win like 6-7 games. But I trust this team. I think there's too much talent on the roster, even with all the injuries. I think they'll find a way to win some tough games like this weekend against the Bengals. But, still, it's a mystery. But I feel Hockenson, Addison, Jefferson, Mason, uh, Darrisaw when he comes back, O'Neal. They still got some great offensive linemen. Will Fries, Ryan Kelly also injured, so now you have a rookie center starting. When it all clicks together and everyone's healthy, this could be one of the best teams. But unfortunately, this may be a year where we just don't see that, and it happens. The Vikings were one of the luckier teams with injuries last year. It didn't have too many, and they won 14 games. But this year you can tell it's just the football gods saying, you're gonna get hit with a lot of injuries, and it's how you respond. But still, I like the talent on this team. That's why they got more depth to be prepared for this, and so I think they could be a potential wildcard team. Next up, the Rams. I'm tossing them in Super Bowl contenders. I think what we've seen, Matthew Stafford, that back seems to be no problem right now. He's slinging the rock to Nacua, Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, a solid offensive line in that defense. Jared Verse, Brian Young up front, just wreaking havoc. This Rams front seven is very good. Their linebacker, stunning on his name, but made that game-winning fumble against the Houston Texans, forcing that ball out. This Rams defense is feisty. Sean McVay, one of the best coaches in football. They're built for the playoffs. We saw that last year. Destroyed the 14-win Vikings, and then took eventually the Super Bowl champion Eagles, who ran through the Packers, Commanders, Chiefs, but really their one tough game was the Rams, and it came down to a big defensive stop. The Rams are built for the playoffs. As long as everyone stays healthy, this team will be in it until the end. Tampa Bay, I almost really want to toss them in Super Bowl contenders, but for now, I'm just going to put them in solid playoff team. I think that's what we've seen from them, 10 to 11 wins. Their offense is super dynamic with Baker, Emeka Buka, Mike Evans when Chris Godwin comes back. Rashad White looks to be a great complementary back to Bucky Irving. The offensive line, once Tristan Wirfs comes back, will be very solid. Graham Barn up front as well. And then the defense, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield, they do got some playmakers, Todd Bowles coaching up that defense. This is a very good team. I just, kind of got to see them get over them because I feel like their ceiling still might be divisional round NFC championship. I just don't know if I can trust them getting to the Super Bowl quite yet, but that may change as the season goes along. But Baker Mayfield, what a stud. I love seeing him out there, taking hits. It doesn't matter. Season on the line. How would this offensive line not like to block for him? The guy's a stud and has shown a lot of maturity since his days at Oklahoma and entering the league. Love to see that. Next up, the Detroit Lions. I'm going to put also in Super Bowl contenders. I think we overreacted to the week 1 game against Green Bay. It was their first game with Micah Parsons at home opener. I think Detroit just came out a little bit flat, but we saw last week this offense still one of the best in the league. Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the best running back duos, if not the best. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams take the top off. Sam Laporta can hit those middle routes. And then that defense, when healthy, Aiden Hutchinson getting into his own, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, one of the best safety duos, Amik Robertson, cornerback. They're in Terrion Arnold taking another leap in his game. This team's great, coached by Dan Campbell. And I think as long as they stay healthy and don't get plagued on defense like they did last year, I think, like I said, similar to the Vikings, but in the opposite, maybe the football god will give them a little bit more health. And hopefully, if they stay healthy, I think this team is due for a deep run. And we saw that just with the demolishing of the Bears. The Bears are also in the not good but intriguing category for me. I think Caleb Williams, I think him and Rome have definitely taken a year to leap, but that defense with Dennis Allen, getting one of the best defensive minds in that first 3 quarters of the regular season against the Vikings, week 1 looked amazing. They collapsed, and then that transition to the Lions game where the Lions put up 52 points. So the defense leaves a lot to be desired, especially with the Jalen Johnson injury now that will sideline him for a while. And then they just haven't used Colston Loveland at all. Luther Burden, who I loved out of Missouri, they just haven't been using him. And I think DeAndre Swift, not my favorite RB1. This offensive line still I think has some problems, which is false starts at the left tackle position. So while they did a lot, I think they're just not that good of a team still. And I think we always have to kind of pump the brakes on, the Bears being off-season winners, can win the division. No, they're still, I think, the worst team in the NFC North, and it's going to take a little bit longer than we expected. But I do like Ben Johnson still as a head coach. I think Caleb Williams, like I said, does look a little bit better, but it's just going to take a lot of time because this is basically Caleb's rookie season. There's going to be a lot of growing pains because last year I don't even count with Matt LaFleur at all. Next up, San Francisco 49ers. I think a solid playoff team. The defense, Fred Warner is, they got some good obviously, Fred Warner is one of the best middle linebackers, Nick Bosa. They got some players, but the secondary is still a little suspect for me, losing guys like Hufanga, Charvarius Ward. I don't know. Really, we saw Spencer Rattler throw for 3 touchdowns on them, and they did look good in week 1 against Seattle, so maybe, it's just kind of wait and see. But this offense, Ricky Pearsall, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle when he comes back, Brandon Ayuk hopefully should be back at some point. Kyle Shanahan's going to coach that team up. Jawan Jennings, Trent Williams, as long as he's on that offensive line, they're always going to be consistently, good. I think they're a solid playoff team. I think they're due for a bounce back. And, they're kind of making me eat my words. I had them finishing last in the division, still had them at like 8 wins, but I think they're going to be more in that 11 wins. And they've taken care of business when they need to, some clutch stops. And I think as long as they can ride the ship with Mac Jones until Brock Purdy comes back, which could be, next week, I think the 49ers are definitely a very solid team. I think, they will go to the playoffs this year. But Super Bowl contenders, I just don't think they have the all-around team to do that quite yet. But maybe I could get proven wrong. The Philadelphia Eagles, still, despite the early struggles, they're going to be Super Bowl contenders for me. I mean, elite defense, Vic Fangio. The offense, has not looked great so far, but they still have all the talent in the world. Jalen Hurts can run the ball. Saquon Barkley, obviously the best running back in football. They got to get A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith going, one of the best wide receiver duos. Really haven't done much. And like I said, my biggest fear is maybe they have a ceiling with Brian Johnson in 2023 where they kind of just become too predictable. The talent can help them win like 11, 12 games, but they just kind of fall off and, teams figure them out. I hope that isn't the case. But, Philly, they're still Super Bowl champions. They know what it takes to win. They had a tough win in Arrowhead, still against the Chiefs, who have been in the Super Bowl 5 years in a row, and 3-time Super Bowl champions, obviously, in a dynasty. I still trust the Eagles. I think they'll figure it out, and I'm going to be patient with them and give them time. The Raiders, I think they're a 7-8 win competitive team. The defense has looked better than I was expected through 2 weeks. After a slow start against the Chargers, they kind of, did some good things in the second half. I know the Chargers were kind of, just running some clock, but this offense is still going to be what makes them succeed. It did not happen against the Chargers. Geno Smith, 3 picks. I think they got to get GNT going more. He had some good runs, but this offensive line, I think, has to do a better job up front blocking. And they still have Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers, obviously. So they got a lot of options. I think it was, a tough division game. Still was 20-9, wasn't, like a super blowout. And then obviously, they had a good win against the Patriots in week 1. They're going to be competitive under Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's worst season is a 7-win season. And despite how tough the division is, I think they'll be able to squeak out some wins and maybe some upsets, to remain competitive because there's too much talent on this team not to. And I still love what they did in the offseason, despite, a little bit of a stinker Monday night. The Green Bay Packers, I mean, even as a Vikings fan, you got to admit, one of the best teams in football so far. Obviously, Super Bowl contenders. Got to just get them up there. I mean, the defense looks amazing with Micah. Jordan Love in this offense is humming. He's just finding different guys. Tucker Kraft, week 2. Week 1, it was just a bunch of deep balls to Romeo Doubs. Josh Jacobs on the ground. They're just doing their thing. They're humming right now. Matthew Golden, I think, will continue to get more involved. This team looks like one of the best. They're coached by one of the best, and Matt LaFleur. And the secondary, still Keyshawn Nixon, had like 5 pass breakups in week 2. Studs, Abram McKinney, one of the best safeties in football. This team all around, it's just super complete. They've already been 2 very good elite teams. One of my Super Bowl contenders, Detroit Lions. But, I still think, the biggest question mark I saw people in my comments were saying was they need to get a win on the road. Obviously, they play Cleveland on the road. That's not really much of a test. But I think it will be intriguing when they go to Detroit, when they have some tougher games on the road. How do they respond? Because it is fair. You got to be able to do everything. Win on the road, but I have so much confidence in this team. I love this team, what they're building, and even as a Vikings fan, I try not to be biased. They're a great team, obviously clear-cut Super Bowl contender so far. The Washington Commanders, I'm still going to put in playoff team. I think they're going to be competing for, I think, a wild card spot. The division, I think, is still Phillies, but it looks like this offense might be taking an unfortunate step back. And then obviously Jane Daniels, the knee sprain. I don't know if he'll be able to go Sunday. Hopefully he can, but him and Terry just don't seem on the same page. Deebo Samuel seems like a nice addition to this team, but the problem is Cliff Kingsbury, this offense has been a little bit too predictable than I'd like through 2 weeks. I would like them to get the ball to Jacoby Brisket, I don't even, sorry about the mispronunciation, but you know who I'm talking about. He was, provide the Washington Commanders a spark in week 1 against the Giants, and then he only gets like 5 carries in week 2, and it's like, you know, are we serious right now? Because major success in week 1 that kind of sparked the offense to get going after a sluggish start was here it is, Krosky Merritt. Where he had 80 yards and touchdown in week 1, gets the ball only 5 times. I think I'd like to see them run the ball, and hopefully they do that in next week. And then hopefully Jay and Terry can just build their communication, because missing a full training camp is a lot, and that was kind of one of my biggest concerns. But I think for me, I would like to see this defense also, keep getting after it. They were in week 1, not as much in week 2. Can that secondary, can Lattimore had a rough week 2 game. I'd like to see a bounce back from him. But still, this team has got a lot of pieces. Laramie Tunsil up front on that offensive line. Hopefully, the Oregon right tackle, he had a tough test against Micah Parsons in that Green Bay front 7. Hopefully, he keeps improving, and this team will get rolling. The Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to throw in potential wild card. They're my division winner, and they are 2-0, but it's not been that impressive. It took them, a last-second pass breakup to beat the Saints. And then week 2, it looks like they're taking care of business, like up 27-3 on the Commanders. They allow like 19 unanswered. Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison, I thought would be a year 2 breakout. Haven't really seen that so far. It's been kind of slow. The running game with James Conner really hasn't been able to get going. They still, have won 2 games. And like I said, I'm kind of riding on them beating San Fran just this weekend for my predictions to kind of keep my hope alive for them to win the division. But still, with the way the Rams look, I think it's probably going to go down the drain. But I was concerned about Matthew Stafford's back, in my opinion. So it was a fair cause. But this team has got talent, but I'd like to see more. Otherwise, I just feel like they might, be a potential similar thing as last year, 8-9 win team. Maybe they sneak in, but still not looking the best right now. Steelers, I'm also going to throw in potential wild card. I think my biggest concern is a defensive fall off that kind of started at the end of last year, has carried into this year. TJ Watt does not look the same. Cam Hayward looks like he's another year older. And unfortunately, the only really spark plug has been Jalen Ramsey, who's made some nice plays. And this offense, you can't expect 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers to do it all. He had a great week 1, took a little bit of a step back week 2. I think they really just got to rely on Jaylen Warren, run the football, utilizing the play action, get DK Metcalf the ball, Pat Freiermuth. That'll be their key to success. They'll still be a solid team. I have them in like the 9 wins, maybe 10 if that defense can take another step back up to what it was. But this defense does concern me. They've been allowing like 27 points per game for the last like 9 weeks, going back to last year. So it is a concern. Hopefully they can figure it out, because I thought the Steelers after week 1 were a bona fide playoff team. Obviously, it's just week 1. Sometimes we overreact, but I'm not going to react to their week 2 loss. Obviously, the special teams play was kind of a fluke that kind of gifted Seattle the game, but still can't have things like that happening. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back in what should be a great game against New England. The Bills, we already know we got to put them in Super Bowl contenders. Josh Allen, James Cook, they got studs all over the place. Deion Dawkins up front, Spencer Brown. This team is one of the best teams in football. That defense did look a lot better. It was against the Jets, but they need a bounce back game after the Ravens were kind of running all over them, and that was maybe the fear. Justin Fields, Breece Hall might be able to have a field day. That wasn't the case. They shut that down. And just the way the Bills, Josh Allen didn't need to do much in week 2. Didn't need to be Superman. Just give the ball to James Cook, utilize the play action, find your guys like Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer. They got a bunch of different guys, different playmakers. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. They're going to be one of the best teams of football again. And maybe they'll be able to get over the hump with the Chiefs, not looking the best. Atlanta Falcons, I'm going to put them in high potential wild card. I think Bijan Robinson, top 3 running back in this league, Michael Penix, just utilizing that play action with Drake London. And if this defense can remain like it did on Sunday, obviously you're not going to allow 6 points, but just getting pressure with guys like James Pierce, their top 3 picks they drafted, defensive line to get after it. If Raheem Morris is going to dial up a good scheme, they got a lot of talent. I don't think they're the best, but they're definitely a potential wildcard team if some of these close games go their way that they lost last year with Kirk Cousins. Overall, though, great team, great offensive line. This team is slept on, and they're not going to be an easy out for anyone. The Seattle Seahawks, I'm also going to throw in potential wild card. Sam Darnold, I think has shown some highs, so some lows. I think he'll kind of figure it out. He played a lot better in that Pittsburgh game despite the picks. The second one was kind of a fluke, just bad up, had to throw it up. But overall, Jack Smith and Jigba looks like a fantasy wide receiver, won the season stud. They got Cooper Kupp more involved. Jake Bobo was catching some balls, and I think is going to keep getting better. This offense will keep humming. Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker especially got going in week 2, which is great to see because they need to do that in the Kubiak play action system. His defenses remain one of the best in football with Mike Macdonald coaching it up. So Leonard Williams up front wreaking havoc, Devin Witherspoon in the back end. It seems good. And they can definitely, upset a team if they do get in. The wild card's just the NFC is so stacked. It's hard to see. The Cleveland Browns, number 1 overall pick contention. I mean, the front seven's great. Myles Garrett, the best player in football, just gets after it. Was getting after Lamar, getting after Joe Burrow in week 1, but still the defense can't go on the field forever, and that we kind of saw it, get exploited as time and time again. It goes on the field. It's going to get tired, and that's going to happen because they allowed 41 points. In a typical game, I feel like it's only like 27 points. They were just, gassed by the end. The offense can't do much, and that's the biggest problem with Cleveland. And Joe Flacco's out there trying his best, but, they just don't got the talent to keep up right now. And that, I think, says it all that need to be said. The Texans, this is tough. I'm gonna go 8 wins, 9 wins. I'll give them the respect. I'll still say potential wild card. I've never been really high on the Texans, just mainly because how bad that offensive line is. And they have CJ Stroud can't do it all by himself. This defense is still one of the best in football. And they did play the Rams and Buccaneers, two great teams, two of the most complete teams in football, and they kept it close in both. But unfortunately, this offensive line still remains a problem for me, and I think that's going to be the biggest concern. And the way Indianapolis looks like right now, if they have to win some of these games, and they have a big game in Jacksonville this weekend, and if they start 0-3, they're not making the playoffs, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of the NFL. Back-to-back AFC South champion, 10 wins, but the offense did look a lot worse in year 2 with CJ Stroud. And obviously, they lost Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell's still out. So it's the Nico Collins show and just kind of who else can step up with him. And it's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb did look great in week 2, but running behind the offensive line, you can't expect consistent results, especially since this isn't prime Nick Chubb after that horrific knee injury. But it'll be interesting to see in a desperate game against Jacksonville if they're able to pull it out, because their season, if they start 0-3, is completely done. Kansas City, I'm still going to go playoff team. I know they're 0-2, but they played the Chargers and Eagles. They played both super tough. And once they get Xavier Worthy back, who should be back this week, Rashee Rice come back, I think this offense will look better. Hopefully they trade for running back. They might trade for another receiver. Tyreek Hill's been in. The defense did look better in week 2. You still have Trey McDuffie, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis on the defense. And then, in my opinion, still one of the best quarterbacks in the world, Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce, I know he's aging, but he's still reliable. Just had that unfortunate drop in week 2 that led to the pick that lost him the game. Otherwise, we're probably looking at them being 1-1. But like I said, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, when they have all their playmakers, they'll be fine. Josh Simmons already looks like a promising left tackle for him. So hopefully, like I said, they're going to be desperate too Sunday night, because if they stare at an 0-3 start, they're kind of doomed. But I think they'll find a way to do it, do a last stand that this dynasty is not over yet. Dallas, I'll throw in potential wild card, I think, or, yeah, I'll go potential wild card. I think this offense will do enough to carry Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, Javonte Williams looks revived, but that defense is going to be the problem. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts. I think if they win most of those shootouts, they could get to 9 to 10 wins, but they were a Brandon Aubrey 64-yard miss away, which most kickers miss, from being 0-2 and a loss to the Giants in 2 division losses. Thankfully, they got saved. But, like I said, Dallas is going to be the most fun teams to watch because they're going to give up a lot of points. They're also going to score a lot. So they'll be one of the most fun teams to watch. And Brian Schottenheimer is a very creative play caller. So love to see that from him. And it was great to see him get a win with all the adversity he's faced in the last couple of weeks. The LA Chargers, I got to throw him in Super Bowl contenders. I'm going to do it. Justin Herbert, the way he's utilized his legs, the way Quinn Johnson's taking a year 3 leap, Keenan Allen being a supporter. Ladd McConkey hasn't even got involved all that much, but we know his potential. That offensive line with Joe Alt, holding things down. Mekhi Becton, they look still like an elite unit, even without Rashawn Slater. With him, I can only imagine how good, even better they look. Omarion Hampton, I think, will continue to get more involved in this defense with John Harbaugh. Derwin James looks completely revived, and it's great to see as long as he's on the field. He's been one of the best safeties in football. This defense is making plays. It's unfortunate Khalil Mack's going to be out for a while, but I trust this defense. Jim Harbaugh made them one of the best units in football, which is kind of, at one point, a bunch of randoms. They still got a lot of playmakers there, and we saw what they did to the Raiders. Saw how they contained Patrick Mahomes, that Chiefs offense, for a while. I like the Chargers, to be a Super Bowl contender. Next up, the New York Jets. I'm probably going to go. Oh gosh, I think it's only fair we put them in number one pick contention. I think it's going to be a long season. I think with the week one offense, I think Breece Hall, might be able to have a good year, but this defense just doesn't look good ever since Robert Saleh got fired. They've been one of the worst units in football, and losing DJ Reed only solidified that. And then obviously the offense, whether it's Tyrod Taylor, maybe he'll be able to manufacture some things, but I just don't see this team winning a lot of games. And that's just kind of the blunt reality of it. I do love Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall, I'm hoping has a, bounce back year, but it's just going to be tough, with the Bills, with the Patriots, and the Dolphins in desperate mode. I just don't know how many games they can win in that division. Carolina, they did show some fight at the end of the last game, so I'll put them in not good but intriguing. I think Ted McMillan is proving why he got drafted in the top 10. He does look good. Bryce Young had a much-needed bounce-back game in week 2, but still, Robert Hunt's going to be out for a while. I think one more game, and they're probably going to be a number one pick, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, see if they can carry their week 2 momentum into week 3. And the defense, still, the run defense did look a lot better last week, which was good. Contained James Conner, Kyler Murray for the most part, but still Bryce Young and the turnovers is the one thing that concerns me. I'll be curious how they look in week 3, and pretty much, any team that's 0-2, a must win. The Titans, I still think they're number one pick. I love Cam Ward. He's been playing some great football. They still, though, it's just clear they have a lack of talent, and I still don't know if Brian Callahan's the long-term answer. The defense can be feisty, keep them in some games, but I just don't think they have the talent to keep up. We saw it in the Rams game. It was like they played great for almost 3 quarters. It's like, shit, we're still losing. So I think it's going to take them a while. But, they did, the offense, showed a lot of flashes. That touchdown pass Cam Ward had was amazing. But still, I think just the lack of talent of this team is going to hold them back. And then obviously the Colts, I think we have to go bona fide playoff team right now. They have not punted the ball once. Tyler Warren looks like a stud. Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor looks like an RB1 this season. Daniel Jones, just the way he's able to use his legs. He can operate Shane Steichen's offense at a high level, just throwing to different guys. Tyler Warren, like I mentioned, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce on some deep balls. And Lou Radrumo is one of the better defensive coordinators. They made some clutch stops where they need to. Cam Bynum, playmaker in the backfield. Latu had a pick in week 1, missed week 2. Hopefully he comes back soon. I think this Colts team is going to be good, and they're going to find ways to win games. They're one of the more complete teams. I still think their lack of pass rush is what may hold them back, but it's hard to dislike what you've seen so far, and they can easily, Charvarius Ward, when he comes back, a solid cornerback one. I think this team can be dangerous. And then Jacksonville Jaguars, I think they can be competitive. That's what we've seen so far with Liam Cohen. I think Trevor Lawrence, some highs, some lows. That is what is. Travis Etienne does look like he's taking a step in the right direction. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr., that connection has been disappointing. Is Brian Thomas Jr., avoiding contact? I'll be curious to see how he bounces back in week 3. But Travis Hunter, just get those 2 wide receivers more involved. And then the defense, they've had some highs. Week 1 against Carolina, they did turn Jake Browning over 2-3 times, but still they gave up some big plays. So I think they'll be competitive, but still going to be some growing pains. They're not super talented, and that kind of fits in the same mold as the Patriots, where Drake May and that offense looked great in week 2, much better. And then, Milton Williams, Harold Landry, that's why they paid the defensive players to make those game-winning sacks and interceptions at the end of the game, those last 2 drives against Miami. So that was great, but still, I think there's still a lack of talent on this team, especially at the playmaking spot, to make this offense fully complete. And they haven't really gotten Travion Henderson involved. I hope to see that more, but they got definitely more talent. Mike Vrabel's a great They're going to win some games they aren't supposed to, and I have them in that 7-8 win category. But with that being said, Let me know what you guys think. What teams were I too high, too low on, or would you agree with? Because I always like people agree with me too, but I always love the debate. Did I overrate, underrate which teams? In what category would you have them in? But as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. Like I said, we're going to be providing football coverage 365 days, year round. Focusing mainly on just the up to date news, key injuries, all that, and tomorrow we'll come out with our AI picks and our Thursday night football matchup and predictions. But with that being said, like I said, as always, make sure to like, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and let me know, like I said in the comments, what you agree, disagree with, and what your favorite team is in your week 3 predictions. But with that being said, thank you for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.